Today we are going to start with our next topic, and that is force and laws of motion. Now, this chapter itself is a very important chapter because we are going to understand a very important physical quantity and its importance in our life, not in our life only. This physical quantity is responsible for this whole universe, and that physical quantity is none other than force. And what is the name of the chapter? Force and laws of motion. Again, the word has come motion here. Now, in the previous chapter, we talked about motion. What is uniform motion? When it is called rest. That means we talked about what is motion, when that type of motion is observed, that all we have studied. But what is then new in this chapter? So previous chapter was for what is motion, how is that the state of motion for any object. But in this chapter, we'll come to know why. Why rest? Why uniform motion is observed in the object? Why non-uniform motion is observed in the object with either uniform acceleration or non-uniform acceleration. So these all whys are answered with a single word, single physical quantity, and that is force. So this chapter is totally devoted for understanding of force and then how these forces are responsible for various states of motion, and then accordingly we'll learn about different laws of motion which was propagated by Sir Isaac Newton. So we'll come to know about different laws of motion also. So for today's class, we are going to understand some of the basic facts related to force. Something you must be knowing from the previous class, 8th knowledge, something which we are going to add also. And then in next classes, we'll come to know about different various facts related to force in this session, okay, in this schedule. So without wasting too much time, let's start with force. If you can recall the terminology force at class 8th standard, you will come to know about the definition which are given generally in the book. A push or a pull is called force. But in my opinion, this is not enough. Push or pull is just only the way in which the force is being applied on any object. It does not give the complete sense of the force. Force is something very big. Only pushing, that means you are applying force away from your body. Pulling means you are just applying force towards your body. It's not going to give is not going to touch every aspect of the force. So to make our definition large, first of all, we'll come to know about some terminologies, and then on the basis of that, we will decide that what should be the proper definition of force. So to define force, first of all, we'll come to know about the different effects of force brought by the force. Okay? That means without force, in the absence of force, these effects will not be observed in our life or in this universe. And after getting the different effect produced by the force, then we'll define the force in a proper manner. So without starting the definition first, I'm going to start with the effect of force brought by the force. Okay? So divide the whole effects produced by the force, we divide under two categories. One is, I have written, it brings change of state of motion. What do we call it? Change of state of motion. And then I have written the second category, change in shape and size. So broadly, the effect produced by the force is categorized under two categories. That change. Now you can observe that in both the division, change is written. So that means force is very responsible for bringing change. Now what kind of change? Either change of state of motion or change in shape and size. So we'll go one by one. We'll go through one by one. Now to understand the change of state of motion, we'll have to divide this change under three different categories. These all three categories which we are going to discuss is actually mentioning the same thing, that is a change in state of motion. Means if we observe any of the changes, this type of changes, that means it is finally going to change the state of motion of the object. So what are these three? Just we are going to understand. The force is only responsible to bring any object from rest to motion or motion to rest. Means something is at rest, suppose something is there here and it has to come into motion. So without bringing force to that object, none of the object from rest can go to motion. We need some force. Wherever you see that a body at rest is now has started movement. That means somewhere force is there. Somewhere force is there. Without force we cannot bring any change. The same goes to motion to rest also, vice versa. That if something is from motion, something is in motion and wants to come to the rest, then in that situation also a force is needed. Then how can we do the same opposite things together? Means how can a rest can be brought to motion or motion can be brought to rest with the same physical quantity? So it's a very simple. Whenever you have to bring any object from rest to motion, then you apply force in the direction of motion in which you want to bring the motion, and from motion to rest you have to apply force opposite to it. So that this means body is moving suppose in this direction. That means in that situation if you want to bring that object into rest, then you have to apply somewhere force opposite to it. Just like while you apply brakes. When you apply brakes, sometimes it happens when according to the road conditions, suppose you are going and you see some bull is there or some animals are there on the road, and if you your brain decides that if we move with the same speed and if we don't stop ourselves, we are going to collide with that. We'll have an accident with that. In that situation, it will be fatal for you. So to avoid that, what you do? You just stop your vehicle, your anything you can have. So in that situation, how do? We apply body. So there you apply force opposite to it. And if you can recall from class 8 knowledge, here the frictional force between the brakes and the rims of the tire helps us to stop us. So this is the situation bringing any object from rest to motion or motion to rest. Both are done with the help of force only. And if anything happens between these two, then we'll say that it is a change of state of motion. Now coming to the next. Again it can change, either increase or decrease. Then what increase or what decrease? In speed. Sometimes it happens that you find a empty road, vacant road, no traffic, less traffic. Then what do? You just accelerate yourself. That means you want to increase the speed of your bike or anything. In that situation, what are you doing? You are increasing the speed according to the traffic condition. Similarly, sometimes you see anything in which if you calculate, your mind calculates that if I keep on moving with the same speed, I may hit something. I may fall somewhere. So what will you do there? Then you apply again brake to decrease the speed. So increasing or decreasing the speed, if you want, there also you need some force. Without that, you cannot increase or decrease the speed. That you cannot change your speed. So to bring change in the speed, there also force is required. So force can change the speed of the object. And the third one, change in direction. Suppose I want to move in this direction. I want to just turn in this way. Now to take a turn, that means you want to change the direction. Now for bringing change in direction also, what is essential there? Force. Force is very much required to change the direction also. So that means these all three is only possible when you are applying force. And whenever out of these three, whatever happens, whichever situation takes place, that means you are actually changing the state of motion with the help of force. Then what about the next category? These all three are under the category of change in state of motion. But what is the next category? Then change in shape and size. When you wake up in the morning, you go for your toothbrushing, then in that situation, when you go for brushing, what do? You press the toothpaste tube. So what are you actually doing? You are applying force to change the shape of the toothpaste tube so that the paste can come out. In the same way, whenever you have to make a lemonade, you just squeeze the lemon piece. So what are you doing? You are applying force to change the shape, but the purpose is to take out the juice from it. But for that, what are you doing? You are applying force to change the shape of the lemon piece. Similarly, when you are folding your handkerchief, your mother kneads dough. Means whenever you have to make chapatis and all, first of all she does the kneading of the dough. So for kneading of the dough also there is a change in shape that is there. When we just press the spring kind of thing, there also we are changing the shape of the spring. Then blacksmiths, which what are blacksmiths? These are the persons which makes iron tools. How does they make iron tool? They keep hitting the iron pieces in such a way with the help of its muscular force, so that it gives us shape to the hot iron is there. So when he hits the piece of iron, and by regularly heating, what finally comes, it converts the iron piece into different kind of tools. So there also we are applying force to change the shape. So, and size also somewhere. So broadly, if we observe the effect are under two categories. Either it brings change in state of motion or change in shape and size. So there are various examples which can prove that existence of force is required for these two situations. Now, suppose the force is not there. Then what will not happen? The rest object will remain at rest. It cannot come to motion. The motion will be in the same motion. It cannot be brought to rest, and take care of that. This is only actually the first law of motion. So we'll have a discussion about it in the next classes. Then what will not happen if the force is not there? You can neither change the speed of neither you can decrease the speed of the object nor the increase. So that means speed will remain constant. Now speed is remain constant. So one of the part of uniform motion. Then you cannot change the direction. That means the direction is also not allowed to be changed. So this means if the force is not there, the speed will not change, not the direction. That means in the absence of force, what will be the observation for the object? It will be uniform motion. We'll come to know about that. Okay. Now, so force is not there. These effects are not going to be observed. And this also not going to be observed. That means whatever shape, whatever size of any object is there, we cannot change any shape or size of the object. So these are the effects. So now, on the basis of these effects, we are going to make a broad definition for force. So what is the definition of force now? Force is a physical quantity which can bring either change in state of motion or change in shape or size by either pushing or pulling. So that is the now large definition for force.